Brand disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by individuals on this platform, the callers plus invited guests, are their own. The information you hear does not reflect the overall views of all parties associated with this brand. We encourage everyone to research all things heard live or via archive for edification purposes. Discretion is advised.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Free Radio.
Help keep the show on the air. If you want to help, you can send your donation through PayPal. The email is debatetalkforyou@gmail.com or through Cash App, $Sal Showtime. Thanks for your support.
Peace. What it is your brother Tyvon Swainell, a.k.a. the Orthodox Moore, a.k.a. the Seven Pillar Saracen, a.k.a. Brother Moore, wishing you all peace and blessings. This evening, I wanted to talk to you about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and that is the Exodus. One of the reasons that I like talking about the Exodus is that it makes the Bible very, very, very real if you know how to get into the subject. I like having conversations like that. For instance, like I like talking to people like Genesis 49ers and the Hebrew of Israel when it comes to DNA, because they have a model that deals with proving out the biblical table of nations using modern genetics. I think that's a very, very, very viable project to work on, and I think it's very worthwhile in the sense that it makes the Bible tangible. In like manner, my good brother Anonymous Hebrew and I, we have a two-pronged attack in dealing with the Exodus, being that the Bible seems to give two different timelines, or two potential timelines that you can come up with. He and I take two opposite timelines, or not opposite, but two different timelines. And within that structure, we decided to meet in the middle, right? Like we were going to take two different timelines and meet in the middle. And we had a certain criteria that we had to follow and respond to. We needed to have a way to deal with the plague narratives. We needed to have a Pharaoh. We needed to have a Moses character. We needed to fill in as many family members from both that we could, etc., etc. We needed to be able to show our timeline from the Bible, etc., and as much supporting archaeology as we could. So to that effect, family, I'm gonna walk through both timelines, but also emphasize my timeline as well. Anonymous let me know that when he has time this month, he will jump on and we will run through his timeline and break down his whole breakdown on the thing. But until then, I'm gonna jump on my timeline because, again, family, we've worked this out on people before, in the sense to where you can't really get around it. Either you're gonna run to my timeline or you're gonna run to his in the conversation. And once you run to either one, it's gonna be a wrap. But with that being said, let me share my screen. And we will break these timelines down. I had to, you know what I'm saying, put out this this picture for the old school fan, for like the parents and the grandparents, you know what I'm saying, who came up watching the Charlton Heston joint, you know what I'm saying, how to pull up the timeline for him, you know what I'm saying. Oh, that's going to be too fast. But this is the timeline of the Exodus in the Bible. In the Bible. So something that me and Anonymous ran into, or Anonymous and I ran into when we debated this topic, because we've debated this topic, we've both debated our timelines with people before. And something that we noticed is people weren't trying to actually deal with the timelines that the Bible was trying to come up with. They wanted to insert something that the Bible wasn't talking about, or point to something as if it was a timeline that it wasn't, and it wasn't a timeline, or they didn't try to disprove the timelines that we brought up. So I want people to understand that that the timelines that we're talking about, we're deriving from the text of the Bible. On top of that, we're corroborating that with historical concepts. Yeah, I'm going to slow that down because that's too fast for me. Hold on, family. Real live editing in this piece. Go to my transitions. Slow that bad boy all the way down. Apply. Let's go. The tale of two timelines. There are two potential timelines within the biblical narrative, and only two timelines. There are three potential pharaohs of the Exodus given the timelines found within the Bible. Again, I will go through the potential timelines and pharaohs using a process of elimination and show you which one I came up with. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible that my timeline is incorrect. I'm saying that one of these two timelines is correct, and one of these three pharaohs from these two timelines is correct. And I'm explaining why I take the pharaoh that I take, and then Anonymous will break down why he takes the pharaoh he takes. And both of us make the case that if it ain't our pharaoh, it's got to be the other person's pharaoh, because it doesn't seem to work out any other way. So the timeline found in 1 Kings 6:1, right? We got this Old Testament timeline, right? So 1 Kings 6:1 says, "And it came to pass in the 480th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, which is the 2nd month, that he began to build the house of the Lord." So just to quickly construct the timeline, is giving you a 480-year period, right? And so when you correlate that with the date that scholars agree, the consensus on Solomon's reign, they'll tell you like it starts at 966. And so when you add on the 4th year, et cetera, or excuse me, when you add on the 4th year, it turns out to 966, excuse me. And so when you do the math on that, it gives you a timeline of circa 1446 BCE during the reign of Thutmose III. Now, this is the pharaoh that Anonymous deals with, and a lot of people come deal with the same pharaoh. And there seems to be a lot of viable reasons to such. And this is why I say if it's not my pharaoh, this is the only other one I could ever rock with. A, it matches up with the timeline. B, there's a plausible story. A plausible narrative that goes along with it, to where I can't put a plausible narrative on any other timeline besides the one that I do rock with. Shout out to Thutmose III. You know what I'm saying? Now, there's a timeline found in Acts 13, verse 17 through 22, and this is the New Testament timeline, right? So we see this here. The God of this people of Israel chose our fathers and exalted the people when they dwelt as strangers in the land of Egypt. And with a high arm brought he them out of it. And about the time of 40 years suffered he their manners in the wilderness. And when he had destroyed 7 nations in the land of Canaan, he divided their land to them by lot. It goes on to say, and after that he gave unto them judges about the space of 450 years until Samuel the prophet. And afterward they desired a king, and God gave unto them Saul the sons of Cis, a man of the tribe of Benjamin, by the space of 40 years. And when he had removed him, he raised up unto them David to be their king, to whom also he gave testimony, and said, I have found David the son of Jesse, a man after my own heart, which shall fulfill all my will. So dealing with the New Testament timeline, you get the span of 40 years in the wilderness after the Exodus. You get the 450 years under the judges of Israel. You get the 40 years under the kingship of Saul. And you got when you understand the kingship of David, etc. You get 40 years under the kingship of David, and then 4 years under the kingship of Solomon. Again, giving you the 966 BCE concept. And when you add all that up, you get a 574-year total from the Exodus to the building of Solomon's temple in circa 1540 BCE, in the Hyksos period, in my timeline. Oh, wrong direction. My fault, family. So the 480-year timeline of 1 Kings 6 does not account for the multiple captivities recorded in the book of Judges. Judges 3 and 8 has an 8-year captivity in Mesopotamia. Judges 4 has a 20-year captivity in Canaan. Judges 6 has a 7-year captivity in Midian. Judges 10 has a 19-year captivity in Philistia and Ammon. Judges 13 has a 40-year captivity in Philistia. So that's 94 years of captivity in the book of Judges. So that's why there's a discrepancy in terms of the timelines. So either they should be counted or they should not be counted, right? And there may be reasons why they should not be counted. For me, I rock with it and I count them and fill in the years. I take it as a linear timeline. But that doesn't mean that discounting these years and rocking with the 480 years is implausible. So we have the 480-year timeline in 1 Kings 6:1, the 94 years of captivity in the book of Judges, 574 years from the Exodus to the 4th year of Solomon's reign. Then we have a 570-year timeline in Acts 13:17 through 22. 4th year of Solomon's reign gives you 574 years from the Exodus to the 4th year of Solomon's reign. So the numbers add up, etc. So again, we have a tale of two timelines. You're either going to have a timeline that drives you up into 1446 BCs, roughly, if you go just with the 1 Kings 6:1 timeline, and you're going to end up during the reign of Thutmose III. I've yet to see another pharaoh from that timeline. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's where you should end up, right? If you take timeline 2 from the one I'm talking about, that'll put you on the doorstep of circa 1540 BCE during the Hyksos time period. And so that'll give you one of two pharaohs. That'll give you either Apophis or Ahmose. And so for me, I take Apophis as the pharaoh of the Exodus. I do not say Ahmose. And there's a lot of people who do say Ahmose. But I do not. That is not the pharaoh that I take. But we got some stuff from Apophis, etc. And we also got some stuff from Ahmose. So biblical timeline, the biblical kings list basically falsified, right? Like, so when Anonymous and I both brought out our timelines, we both debated Chris Harris on this. You can currently see Chris Harris debating on Soneta's platform, etc. We both ran into the same issue on this, which was interesting in the sense to where there was basically an assertion that the timeline was false based upon linking it up to Solomon's temple because there's no proof of such, etc., etc., etc. So what we developed was a falsification concept based upon lining up the king's list and making sure that the king's list still worked out in terms of timeline and chronology. So in the Bible, in 2 Kings 19:9 and Isaiah 37:9, there's verses speaking about Tirhakah, king of Ethiopia and Egypt, and him dealing with King Hezekiah. And so when you look into the historical record, their timelines overlap. You see that Tirhakah reigns from 690 to 664. Hezekiah reigns from 792 to 687. So you see that there's a 3-year overlap between the two. So the kings lists corroborate each other in terms of chronology and whatnot. So when you work out the king's list from then on, from Hezekiah to Solomon's reign, the timeline still works out properly. The timeline still works out properly. So the king's list match up in terms of chronology, in terms of time. And this works for either one of our timelines because we're using the Solomon's temple date as an integral part of how we determine our timeline. Just shout out to Taharka. Putting in work on these series, you know what I'm saying? Shout out to Hezekiah, you know what I'm saying? A lot of artifacts there. So going forward, I will be getting into the Assyrian pharaohs of Egypt and their biblical names. One thing I assert that I have yet to hear anyone else assert is that I've heard the Hebrew of Israel. I do believe he says he was able to find his pharaoh's name in the Bible. But I definitely do say that I find the name of not one pharaoh, but I also find the name of his predecessor in the Bible in Hebrew. So going forward, I will definitely break that down. But right now, I just wanted to stick with just the timeline. Just the timeline, just so people can wrap their minds around what we're talking about, wrap their brains around what we're talking about. That's what we're saying, etc. But like I said, we had to do things like both times they had to have like a plague narrative, etc. Right. So this is the Tempest Stele from Akhmos. Right. This goes back to circa 1550. This falls within my timeline, right? So this is the stele that I use to talk about the plagues, deal with the plagues, etc. And then map this out into a scientific concept and explain the plague scientifically. Anonymous does the same thing. And I'm sure a lot of people that use the Tumulus the third timeline used to do the same thing. They'll use like the Ipuwer papyrus because the Ipuwer papyrus has a range, a date range that can go to 1450, and so that works within the a circa 1450, which works within the 1446 timeline. Like I said, we both have Moses characters, etc., etc., etc. So there's a whole list of criteria we had to fulfill. But I'm going to keep this short and sweet, family. Next week, I'll be getting into the names of my pharaohs and predecessor, and really focusing on the Assyrian motif. And God willing, if I have time, I'm going to jump into why it's important to me in the sense to where I hear a lot of people talk about, this is another reason why I'm bringing this out during Black History Month. I hear a lot of people talk about in like the conscious community or Pan-Africanist communities, etc., that they believe that the Bible is inherently anti-African. One of the reasons why I even debated the Exodus is because this topic came up in a debate about, is the Bible anti-African? And I make the argument that it's not anti-African. And one of the narratives is that the Bible denigrated Egyptians and Egyptian spirituality. And I make the counter argument that the Bible actually is the living repository of African monolatry, which is the form of monotheism. And so not only do I make that argument, I speak about how a lot of people misview the concept of it being Egyptians that actually persecuted Israelites within Egypt. I take the biblical perspective that it was the Assyrian who oppressed Israelites in Egypt. And I walk that out a couple of different ways. I break down the Assyrian heritage, but I also break down the religious system that was being used. And I also show how that's different. I show how that's different than the system that the Most High imposed through Moses, etc. And I show how it's different from the African monolatric system that you can even see amongst Akhenaten, and even how it's even different than like the priesthood of Amun, etc. Right. But with that, family, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. I pray y'all were edified by something on that. That is a quick introduction to the timeline. And like I said, the next video, I'll be getting into my breakdown on who is who and what is what. But with that, family, I say peace and love.